ancient oath sworn in darkness, in the earliest days of Middle-earth, where the winds whispered of bloodshed and ancient pacts. There was a betrayal whose consequences would shape the very fate of the world. Legends tell of a promise made in the deepest shadows, an oath forged in the fires of treachery. But what if this vow, long lost to time, was the true key to understanding Sauron's rise? What if the darkness that would later consume the land began not with a desire for domination, but with a simple, yet deadly, oath sworn by the Dark Lord himself? The very foundations of Middle-earth are built on the ruins of forgotten promises and broken bonds. The first betrayal, hidden in the mists of time, lies at the heart of Sauron's journey. It was a betrayal that tethered him to Morgoth's unrelenting power, chaining him to the darkness in ways that no one, not even the valor, could fully comprehend. This ancient oath, a binding pact sealed in blood and fire, was the true beginning of Sauron's evil. But what price did he pay for it? And how did this vow change the course of history forever? The truth of that oath has been lost, buried beneath the weight of centuries. Yet it is there, in the forgotten corners of Middle-earth, waiting to be discovered, hidden in the ruins of places like Moria and Utumno, where the first seeds of Sauron's dark power were sown. What secrets lie in these ancient, forsaken places? What truths have been buried so deeply that even the wisest among us have forgotten them? These are the questions that plague the minds of those who seek to understand the true nature of Sauron's rise to power. And one of those seekers is Gandalf. Gandalf, the wise and revered wizard, has spent his life uncovering the secrets of Middle-earth. Yet, even he cannot escape the growing suspicion that something vital has been hidden from him, something essential to understanding Sauron's origins. There are gaps in his knowledge, shadows that cloud his understanding of the Dark Lord's rise. For Gandalf, the time has come to search the ancient ruins, to uncover the truth of Sauron's earliest betrayal, and to learn the cost of the oath that shaped the very course of history. The ancient tales speak of Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, whose reign cast a shadow over all of Middle-earth. His power was vast, his cruelty unparalleled, but it was his lieutenant, Sauron, who would one day rise to challenge the very fabric of existence. After Morgoth's fall, it was Sauron who inherited the mantle of darkness, continuing the work of his fallen master. But this inheritance was not won through strength or conquest alone. It was secured through an oath, a promise made in the darkest recesses of Middle-earth. In the ruins of Moria, Gandalf begins to search for answers. He knows that Moria, once a great and prosperous kingdom of the dwarves, is now nothing more than a decaying tomb. But hidden within its vast, forgotten chambers lie clues, inscriptions, runes, and relics that could reveal the truth of Sauron's past. There, too, lies Utumno, the first dark stronghold of Morgoth, whose fall heralded the rise of Sauron. But what remains of these places, and what secrets have they kept for so long? Gandalf's investigation leads him deeper into the forgotten corners of Middle-earth. The ancient texts and records he uncovers hint at something far darker than the simple desire for power. There are whispers of an ancient betrayal, a pact sealed with Morgoth that would forever bind Sauron to the Dark Lord's legacy. This betrayal was not a moment of ambition. It was the moment when Sauron swore his soul to the darkness, chaining himself to an ancient power that would ultimately consume him. The more Gandalf uncovers, the more he realizes that Sauron's power does not simply come from his will to dominate. It comes from something far older, far more sinister. The oath that Sauron swore to Morgoth was not merely an expression of loyalty. It was a curse that bound him to the dark forces of Middle-earth. The price of this betrayal was not just Sauron's allegiance, it was his very soul. Gandalf's investigation begins to unravel the true nature of Sauron's darkness. The oath was not just a tool of manipulation. It was a binding contract, a pact sealed with blood that would drive Sauron to commit unspeakable acts of evil in the name of his dark master. This betrayal was not just the first step in Sauron's rise. It was the very thing that gave him his power. And yet, the cost of that power was far greater than Sauron could ever have imagined. In the depths of Moria, Gandalf discovers a hidden chamber, a forgotten hall filled with relics of the past. The walls are etched with the dark runes of Morgoth's followers, and in the center of the chamber lies a stone, ancient and cold, covered in a layer of dust. As Gandalf approaches, the stone begins to glow with an eerie light, as if it recognizes the presence of the one who seeks the truth. The stone reveals the true nature of the oath and the cost that Sauron paid for his ambition. Gandalf is struck by the revelation. Sauron did not simply serve Morgoth, he became part of him. His very essence fused with the darkness that had once consumed the world. The oath that Sauron swore to Morgoth was not merely a promise of loyalty. It was a pact that bound him to the very heart of evil itself. And it was this betrayal, long buried in the depths of Middle-earth, that would fuel Sauron's rise to power. As Gandalf delves deeper into the mystery, he begins to understand the true nature of Sauron's corruption. The Dark Lord's power is not born of mere ambition. It is born of an ancient oath that has tethered him to the dark forces of Middle-earth. This betrayal, long hidden in the ruins of Moria and Utumno, is the key to understanding Sauron's rise to power. It is the first betrayal, the moment when Sauron's soul was sealed to the darkness. That changed everything. But with this revelation comes a grim realization. The evil that Sauron unleashed upon Middle-earth was not just the result of his ambition. It was the result of an ancient pact, an oath that bound him to a power far greater than any he could control. And now, far more dangerous than anyone ever imagined. The ancient oath that shaped Sauron's rise is not just a relic of the past. It is a living force, one that still echoes in the darkness. And as Gandalf stands in the ruins of Moria, staring at the stone that reveals the truth of Sauron's betrayal, he knows that the fate of Middle-earth hangs in the balance. The price of Sauron's power was not just his soul, it was the very soul of the world itself. The darkness of Middle-earth has always been present, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the moment when it can rise again. But now, with the truth of Sauron's first betrayal revealed, that darkness has been awakened, and the world must face the consequences of a pact made long ago in the heart of shadow. The weight of Gandalf's thoughts pressed heavily upon him as he pored over the ancient scrolls spread across the stone table. Each page, worn and fragile with age, whispered secrets of a time long past, a time when Morgoth's shadow loomed over all of Middle-earth, and when Sauron, his greatest lieutenant, swore an oath that would bind him to a destiny shaped by darkness. The wizard's brow furrowed, and he traced his finger across a passage that had troubled him for days. The words were written in an ancient tongue, one that only a few among the wise could still understand. But it was not just the language that unnerved him, it was the message itself. An oath forged in blood and fire, one that bound Sauron to Morgoth's will. A promise that shaped the course of Middle-earth's history, a pact sealed in treachery. Gandalf's fingers trembled slightly as he leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. The more he uncovered, the clearer it became. Sauron's betrayal was not simply an act of ambition. It was the result of an ancient, twisted loyalty, a binding vow that had led Sauron to forsake all that was good and to embrace the darkness that would one day consume Middle-earth. As Gandalf sifted through the scrolls, images from the past began to emerge, visions of the first battles that had shaped Sauron's rise. He saw the vast armies of Morgoth sweeping across the land, and at the center of it all, Sauron, wielding power of unimaginable strength. The Balrog, a creature of immense power and fire, was not just a servant of Morgoth. As many believed, it was a force that helped bind Sauron to his oath. The two were connected, intertwined in a pact that was not easily broken. The more Gandalf uncovered, the more disturbed he became. This betrayal was not just about power, it was about Sauron's soul. Morgoth had not merely used Sauron as a tool. He had ensnared him, chaining him to his will with a promise that was not just spoken, but forged in the very fabric of Sauron's being. Gandalf's heart grew heavy with the realization that the very essence of Sauron's darkness was rooted in this ancient oath. His suspicions began to take shape in his mind, but there were still gaps in his understanding. The mysteries of Sauron's past were buried deep, and it was only by uncovering the lost oaths, by tracing the paths of betrayal, that led Sauron to Gandalf could hope to piece together the truth, and to do that, he would need to venture into the forgotten depths of Middle-earth. Gandalf turned to his trusted companions. Aragorn, the ranger and heir to the throne of Gondor, had long proven his courage and wisdom. Frodo, the humble hobbit who carried the burden of the One Ring, possessed a resilience that had not yet been fully realized. Together, they had faced unimaginable dangers, but this would be their greatest trial. It was time to uncover the truth of Sauron's earliest betrayal. The path to Moria was long, but it was through the ancient ruins of the dwarves that Gandalf hoped to find the answers he sought. It was there, deep beneath the earth, where the true nature of Sauron's oath was hidden. The walls of Moria had witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms, the forging of great powers, and the destruction of civilizations. But it was also here, in the shadows, where the remnants of Morgoth's influence had taken root, lingering in the depths. As Gandalf and his companions made their way toward Moria, the air grew thick with tension. The journey was fraught with danger, but it was a necessary one. They could not afford to turn back, not when the stakes were so high. Sauron's dark legacy was not just a tale of ambition. It was a story of corruption, of a soul bound by a pact that had shaped his every action. Along the way, Gandalf's mind lingered on the flashbacks that had begun to haunt him. The fall of Utumno, Morgoth's first stronghold, had marked the beginning of Sauron's rise. It was there that Sauron had made his vow, a vow that would change the course of Middle-earth's history forever. The power of Morgoth's influence was undeniable, and it was through that power that Sauron had ascended. His loyalty to his dark master had been absolute, and the price of that loyalty was his very soul. The closer they came to Moria, the more the mystery deepened. Gandalf could feel the weight of the past pressing upon him. The power struggles between Morgoth, Sauron, and the Valar had shaped the history of the world. But it was the betrayal that lay at the heart of Sauron's rise that held the key to understanding his true nature. It was no longer just a matter of seeking knowledge. It was about survival. The evil that Sauron had once unleashed upon Middle-earth was far from gone. It was still there, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the moment when it could rise again. And now, Gandalf and his companions were about to uncover the truth of that ancient betrayal. As they approached the gates of Moria, Gandalf's thoughts turned to the ancient oaths that had been made in the depths. The inscription on the stone gate seemed to pulse with an energy that was both ancient and malevolent. It was as if the very stone had been carved to hold the weight of the past, sealing away something far worse than any of them had yet imagined. We must be careful, Gandalf warned, as they crossed the threshold into the darkened halls of Moria. The answers we seek may not be easily found, and what we uncover may change everything we thought we knew about Sauron. The group ventured deeper, each step taking them further into the heart of Moria's ancient secrets. The air grew cold, and the walls seemed to close in around them, as if the very ruins themselves were alive. As they made their way through the twisting corridors, Gandalf's mind raced. He could feel the weight of history pressing upon them. Every stone, every inscription, every whisper of the past was a clue, a piece of the puzzle that would reveal the true nature of Sauron's betrayal. But the further they went, the more the danger became real. The presence of Morgoth, though gone from Middle-earth, still lingered in these forgotten places. And with each step, Gandalf knew they were getting closer to the heart of the darkness that had once consumed Sauron. "Stay close," Gandalf muttered. "We are not alone here." As they continued deeper into Moria, the feeling of unease grew. Something was waiting. Something ancient and powerful, tied to Sauron's first betrayal, was about to be unleashed. Gandalf knew that the truth was close, but so too was the danger. The discovery of the lost oaths would change everything, and it was a discovery that could not come without a price. And in that darkness, as they ventured further into the labyrinth, Gandalf knew one thing for certain. The world had not seen the last of the ancient evils that had shaped Sauron's rise. The shadows were still there, waiting to be awakened, and their journey into the past had only just begun. The air in the chamber was thick with a suffocating sense of dread. As Gandalf's fingers gently traced the edges of the ancient artifact, the stone had not been touched for millennia, yet it felt warm to the touch, its surface thrumming with an energy that was at once foreign and terrifying. This relic, hidden deep within the forgotten halls of Moria, was the key to understanding the dark pact that had bound Sauron to Morgoth, a secret that had remained buried in the heart of the earth for far too long. Gandalf could feel the weight of history pressing down on him as he studied the artifact, its form not unlike a crown, yet twisted in a way that defied understanding. It was forged in the ancient days, a symbol of power and betrayal, of a bond that was stronger than mere loyalty. The realization began to settle in. Sauron's oath was not merely a promise, it was a curse, a binding force that tethered the Dark Lord to the very essence of Morgoth. He staggered back, his mind reeling from the implications of his discovery. This oath, forged in the heart of Utumno, had shaped Sauron's very being. The path to his power was not simply built on ambition. It was a consequence of an ancient, malevolent pact that had twisted Sauron into the being he had become. Gandalf's breath caught in his throat as the full weight of this truth settled into his bones. Sauron's existence was not his own. It had been shaped by this curse, this dark bond with Morgoth that had never been broken, only hidden from the world. As Gandalf stepped back, Aragorn, Frodo, and the others watched him closely. Sensing the change in the air, the deep disturbance that had shaken the wizard to his core. They too could feel it now, the presence of something far older, far more sinister than they had imagined. The artifact pulsed with a dark energy, as though it were alive, as though it were waiting for something. Gandalf looked to them, his eyes hard with the knowledge he had just uncovered. "It is worse than I thought," Gandalf said, his voice grim. This was no simple vow of allegiance. Sauron was not merely Morgoth's servant, he was bound to him, his soul shackled by an oath that no power in Middle-earth could undo. This pact is the very foundation of his power. It is what made him who he is, and it is what will return him to full strength if we are not careful. The realization of the scope of Sauron's betrayal began to sink in for the others. The stakes were higher than they had imagined. They were not just battling a corrupted being. They were fighting against the very essence of Morgoth, still alive and thriving in the darkness of Middle-earth. The evil they faced was not some distant memory. It was a living force, one that had been waiting dormant, but never truly destroyed. Frodo shuddered as he glanced around the dim chamber. The shadows seemed to deepen, closing in on them, as though the very walls of Moria were closing in. The power of the artifact, the relic of Morgoth's influence, felt as though it were seeping into the very air they breathed. "We need to leave," Frodo whispered, his voice trembling. "We've uncovered enough. The power here, it's more than we can handle." But Gandalf remained still, his gaze fixed on the artifact. "We cannot leave, not yet. We must understand what this means. We must uncover the full scope of Sauron's betrayal before it is too late." The tension in the air was palpable. Gandalf's resolve was unwavering, but the danger was growing with every passing second. The more they uncovered about Sauron's past, the clearer it became that the threat they faced was far greater than they had ever imagined. The artifact, bound to Morgoth's power, was a reminder of the dark past that had shaped Sauron's rise, but it was also a harbinger of what was to come. Sauron's influence had never truly faded. It had merely been buried, waiting for the right moment to resurface. As Gandalf and his companions continued to explore the chamber, the dark presence that had lingered in the depths of Moria began to spread. The walls seemed to vibrate with the force of ancient power, and the air grew colder, heavier. The evil of Morgoth had not been confined to the past. It was still here, in the very heart of Middle-earth, ready to rise again. Gandalf's suspicions were no longer just suspicions. They were undeniable truths. The foundation of Sauron's power had been built on an ancient curse, a curse that bound him to Morgoth's will. The echoes of that dark past had come to life once more. The darkness in Moria was not merely a remnant. It was a living, breathing force that sought to be unleashed. Gandalf took a deep breath, his mind racing as the weight of the discovery pressed down on him. The danger was not just in the knowledge they had uncovered. It was in the power that still lurked, waiting to be awakened. "We must act quickly," he said, his evil that has been waiting for so long. But even as Gandalf spoke, he knew that they had already done what they had feared. They had uncovered the truth, and in doing so, they had awoken the very evil they sought to destroy. The darkness of Sauron's past had come alive once more, and they were now trapped in the web of his ancient betrayal. The tension in the chamber reached its peak as the artifact began to glow brighter, its malevolent energy filling the room. Gandalf, Aragorn, Frodo, and the others could feel it, the darkness that had been unleashed, the power that sought to consume them. It was no longer just a mystery to solve. It was a force that would stop at nothing to reclaim its place in Middle-earth. The group stood frozen, knowing that the battle they faced was not just one of physical strength. It was a battle for their very souls, a battle against the darkness that had shaped the world for millennia. They were not just fighting against Sauron, they were fighting against the very essence of evil itself. The silence of Moria felt heavy as the group left the depths of the chamber behind, their hearts weighed down by the truth they had uncovered. The legacy of Sauron's betrayal was not just an ancient story. It was a living, breathing evil that still haunted Middle-earth. The ruin of Moria, once a place of dwarven pride and greatness, was now a tomb, a testament to the price of that betrayal. The walls of Moria seemed to echo with the lost history of Morgoth's influence, a reminder that some evils could never be destroyed. They could only be buried, hidden away, and left to fester in the dark. As Gandalf and his companions made their way out of Moria, the reality of their discovery settled in. They were no longer simply travelers,